I was I was surprised by you stopping there for some reason.
Sorry. That's kind of where the notes stopped, but anyway. That's,
no, you're right. We weren't already practiced. But... Hello and welcome to episode 259 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. It's Wednesday the 19th of February. Hope you're well and staying as sane as you feel you need to be. I'm your host, Ian Truscott. I'm not a rock star, but I am a CMO. And on this podcast, I chat with a band of marketing chums who share their marketing street knowledge, which I hope will bring out the rockstar marketer in you. In the marketing studio this week, former Forrester research director Jeff Clark and I dive into how do we measure brand. It's easy to say that brand is important but hard to measure. However, we have some ideas. But first, we need to pay the bar tab. I'll be back in a moment.
We'll be right back. After this word. We'll be right back. After this word.
My dad works in B2B marketing, but I never really knew what that meant. Then one day my dad came by my school for career day and told everyone in my class he was a big ROAS man. Then he just kept saying things like, the bigger the ROAS, the better, over and over. My friends still laugh at me to this day. I think it means calculating a return on ad spend. One thing's for sure, I'll be known as the ROAS man's kid for the rest of my days. Why couldn't you just be a fireman or a lawyer? Why? You ruined my life, Dad.
Not everyone gets B2B, but LinkedIn has the people who do. And with ads on LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people based on job title, industry, likelihood to buy, and more. Start converting your B2B audience into high-quality leads today. We'll even give you a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/MPN to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/MPN. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
This episode is brought to you by Audi. The road is calling. Embrace the thrill of the drive with the all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron. Featuring effortless power, serious acceleration, and advanced Audi tech. It's not just a new EV. It's a new way to experience driving. The all-new, fully electric Audi Q6 e-tron is here. The next chapter of Audi starts now.
welcome, Ian, to the Rockstar CMO studio.
Thank you very much.
How are you today?
Oh, I should have let you finish. I'm very well, thank you very much. How are you?
Okay. I'm doing okay.
Yeah, I'm a little stressed, but
Yeah.
and stuff.
It's can be a stressful time of year. Speaking of stressful, I could jump into the weather because yesterday we got, I don't know, it seemed like a foot of snow followed by an inch of rain for those that follow the English measurement system.
Mm-hmm.
And then we actually got more snow. So outside it's like an ice park.
Good Lord.
Some of the ice is clear, and some of it is just like white. It is.
So the rain came and then it froze.
Yeah. Then it went down well below zero, and
wow.
Or I should say, yeah. And it started snowing again on top of that. So it.
Wow. Well, I had first time we lived in America. We were down in Virginia, I think. And there was an ice storm, and I remember sort of winding the windows down on my car, but there's still a sheet of ice.
Right.
The window.
There's still a window there.
Yeah. It's fascinating and beautiful as well. So it sounds lovely, but I imagine it's, like you say, slightly stressful.
Yeah.
So, and here is, we had some sunshine today, which is nice, cold, but sunny. So I like that.
Yay.
Good for walking and stuff. So that's the agenda item number one. We've done the weather. So last week, we skipped over one of our famous rabbit holes, and we touched on the value of brand. And when we were talking about what's broken with B2B measurement, and we talked about how brand is a multiplier of all your marketing efforts, which is obviously very prescient to measurement. And we talked about specifically I talked about how notoriously difficult it is to measure brand compared to vanity metrics, demand metrics, which our marketing automation tools are us conditioned to focus on. And we've started to get into the habit of communicating to the rest of the C-suite, right? Because they're easy things to say. But it's very easy to say things like you need to focus on your brand, but it's hard to measure. So I thought that we'll dive into the metrics and give some practical advice on measuring brand. What do you say, Jeff?
Well, I say we jumped over the rabbit hole, but the rabbit has reached up and grabbed us, kind of like Bugs Bunny. Don't go to, I can't do a Bugs Bunny voice, but it's like, what's up?
Rabbit.
What's up, Doc? So this is something, we touched on in the distant past. And then we touched on it with our former colleague, Grant Johnson, when he was releasing his marketing performance index. That was episode 224, because that touches on a lot of the brand measures that we all discussed today. But, the trick is really to find things that touch on various aspects of brand, which is kind of like, how we'll do our little deep dive into, what's awareness and what's, customer satisfaction, how these things relate to how people are observing you from a brand perspective. And then what can you actually access out of your systems in the short term? Because as we know, a lot of brand measurement, at least traditional, is things that happen on sort of the long arc of, how has our awareness or our preference changed, by doing surveys and focus groups, et cetera, et cetera. But we want to find leading indicators and things that's like, as we go along the way, month to month or, quarter to quarter, are the things we can say, hey, this is showing us that the things that we're doing from a brand perspective are actually having an impact.
So cool. So, yes, I was... I was surprised by you stopping there for some reason.
Sorry. That's kind of where the notes stopped. But anyway, that's...
no, you're right. We went already prepped this, but the Grant stuff, we're often referring back to his marketing performance index. So I'll have to include a link to that in the show notes because he's done an awful lot on his CMO mentor website, hasn't he, about all that stuff. But if we get back to your model, the one we discussed in episode 112, which is that would be like 2 years ago. It's sadly for our editorial policy, not 5 things, but it is 3. So we're going to dive into those, starting with one of my favorites from my own ART acronym that I'm always going on about, that marketing is all about creating awareness, revenue, and trust. There's a clue there. Where are we starting?
Well, I know it's not 5 things or it's 3 things, but each of the 3 has 2 or 3 sub things, and so we're kind of like breaking it wide open and messing with your editorial policy. But yes, we want to start with awareness, and the thing is, as I said, some of these break down into a couple of things. So general, awareness is kind of the general buyer acknowledgement that you're a vendor out there in the market. That has kind of two distinctions. One is just name recognition. So name recognition, unless you're a startup, and you're just trying to get people to know who the heck you are and that you exist, really doesn't have a lot of value because, when I think back to, there's a lot of brands, certainly a lot of historical brands, like say a Polaroid. It's like, okay, I know the name, but, are they still in business? What are they doing? And when I had done, some brand research in the past, I mean, you find that maybe you do well on awareness on just the name recognition, but then as you go further down the sort of the list we're going to go through, it's like then all of a sudden you find that you're not scoring well. The next part of awareness, which I think has more value to us as marketers, is reach. So are we getting eyeballs engagement with our target audience? So this demonstrates that your communications are getting picked up. You can, and it's better. The better you can define your target audience and measure against, you reach against that target audience, then the better, you are. It still doesn't get us to the next things we'll talk about down the road a bit, but it is a good initial indicator of awareness.
I hadn't realized that from the notes, but so you're saying name recognition has little value? I mean, that seems surprising.
The thing is, okay, I'll let you finish your
No,
sentence.
because from my perspective, the way that you sort of measure awareness is by branded search and that kind of thing. So the fact that somebody recognizes your name and associates you with the solution to the problem, and then the reach of people that know that seems to be the combination, right? What do you mean
So
by name
you're
recognition?
you're taking a jump ahead. It's like
Okay.
they've heard your name, and then the jump ahead you made, they're associating you with a solution to their problem.
Oh, I see.
So if you just look at, I've heard the name,
Right.
before you get into association, that's what has little value.
Oh, okay. All right. Yeah, but I would imagine that would be but if I'm jumping ahead, I think awareness is I would consider awareness of yourself as a solution provider, but I guess we're going to dig into that a little bit more then. But so therefore, because I'm always talking about the awareness, revenue, and trust. So where I would start to measure that would be branded search and category search volume. So not just that your name is, that you're not just measuring your brand awareness and reach, but also quite often for a B2B solution, you need to be aware of whether people have actually heard about the category you're in, right? Because people call your category different things, right? So I think the search volume on your category is probably quite important. And also, obviously you need to be cautious with branded search because a lot of people just search for your name when they want to log into your product. And so you need to understand that, right? And then also some of the basic vanity metrics like website traffic and social engagement. But again, I wonder if your definition of awareness, if I'm maybe jumping ahead a little bit there. So, things like share of voice and engagement with your comms would suggest that that's a bit more than name recognition, isn't it?
Yeah, it suggests that if they're engaging with you, and if you're turning up in a category search, I'm
Yeah.
looking for application development tools. Oh,
Yeah.
you show up. Okay, so now
Yeah.
we're getting into the we're dangerously slipping into the next category. So
Yeah,
I'll leave it to you.
Well, I think that it's interesting because it just seems to me like, having reviewed this, I think brand awareness is kind of like the overarching thing. So this first one perhaps is a bit too nebulous in terms of the title, calling it awareness, right? Maybe we should have been a bit more specific with what this actually means, which is kind of name recognition and reach, right? Because also I was going to talk about anecdata, which is what you hear from the field. But again, I guess if your name is not associated with the solution, I've gone a bit ahead. So how would you measure this sort of very narrow view of what awareness means then?
Well, because I think that so with reach, you certainly, and we'll get a little bit into some of the specifics that you can think about with share of voice and social or ad impressions, unique web visitors. This is I think the tricky thing, which in terms of distinguishing this, is that when you get into perception, so there's two, and I'm jumping into the next subcategories. There's two varieties of perception. One is I associate with you a category, so like I mentioned before, I'm looking for application development tools. I'm looking for web content management system. I'm looking for EV charging technology, and you pop up as a player in that market. So now you've cemented an association with a particular category. Okay. There's another variety of perception, which is attribute. So are you, okay, if I've heard of your company, I see you're out there in the news, I know you're in a particular market, are you the stable vendor? Are you the innovative vendor? Are you the market leader? Are you a challenger? This is an aspect of, and I totally agree with you. Awareness, as we often think about it, you could broadly paint across all of the different measures we're going to talk about. But to get a little bit more specific, now we're starting to see ourselves, our company, show up in ways that are positive because we're better able to engage with the client on this, matching our solution to their need.
Okay. All right. So, like you say, you've leapt into number 2, which is perception, which seems to be number 1 around awareness is just knowing our name and how broadly how deeply we've got into our target audience. And then here we're saying perception is what is it that somebody thinks about us, what attributes they have against us. If they hear our name, what are the things they think about? Basically, is that right? Is that what you mean by perception?
Exactly.
Okay, so how do we measure that, and how do we measure perception?
Well, I think if you take the two separately, so category association, can be measured, and this I think particularly gets into your search activities. So as you mentioned, branded search, because people are specifically looking for, they have a particular need and they're specifically looking for your vendor, your name. Category of search, again, if I'm looking for a particular type of technology and I see you showing up in my search results, that I know we're doing well in terms of placing ourselves in that category. And then also in kind of from the influencer world, with analyst mentions, rankings, people who publish, papers and media, et cetera, are they mentioning us? And I think this is, all of these things I think are good money metrics because they're showing that you've actually placed yourself among a list of other vendors in a particular category that people are going to be looking for.
Yeah.
If you think about the attribute association, it's a little bit trickier, but there are certainly social monitoring tools, press monitoring tools where you can see where does your name show up with particular sentiments in the audience. And I know when we were working at SDL, I mean, we had tools, social media monitoring tools that enabled people to do that. And are they positive, negative in general, or can we actually, suss out specific characteristics that people are associating us with? And like I said, leadership or innovation, stability, those could be the things. I mean, it depends what you're trying to project in the market. But those are good tools for helping you see if that's landing.
Yeah, probably also do some surveys around this as well, isn't it? It's a bit like that. I can't remember what the model is, but it's like your brand is like the hero or the, and those different, they're Carl Jung, isn't it? The different archetypes of a brand. And you could do something like that, couldn't you? And say, do you think we're like this or we're like this, and get an idea of the brand archetype that people associate you with. But also, like you say, with attributes. So some of those attributes, I think we've discussed brand attributes before, haven't we? Around whether you're secure, whether you're trusted, and all that kind of good stuff. Yeah, absolutely. And then the category association. This is where I'd got ahead of it, hadn't I? When we talk about awareness, this is really about your name is associated with the solving of a particular problem, right? And so, like you say, do you appear in those category searches? Do you appear in analyst mentions and thought leadership mentions? So awareness I got completely wrong, but I think but I think that's fine, because I think for me awareness is like an umbrella of all the things we're going to discuss in these 3 things. So we've sort of driven down into perception. So what's the next thing we need to look at?
The next thing is preference.
Right.
So this is telling you whether the target buyers are likely to buy from you, and or if you've got existing customers, hopefully you got some customers, are they likely to repurchase from you? So, this again breaks down into several different distinctions. One being propensity to buy, is kind of the obvious thing. But the other thing, which is I think more commonly measured, is customer satisfaction. So this is kind of the gold standard for renewals, repeat business, growing wallet share within an organization and an account. And then the third way to distinguish preference would be advocacy. So, our customers, spreading your brand and their and your message around, with their colleagues and with the market in general.
Yeah, and I think this is really important today, isn't it? In our SaaS world, it's not just a propensity to buy; it's a propensity to renew, isn't it? And it's a propensity to upsell, cross sell, all that good stuff as well, isn't it? That's and it's almost like measuring churn, the likelihood to churn almost as well, isn't it? And when you talk about preference and stuff. So how do we measure preference?
I'll start with, as you're kind of referring to, like in the renewals, the repeat business, is that, and this is often not something that is good indicator of marketing's efforts as opposed to just how well the customer experience is working for them, and you're tracking their ability to come back into the fold. I think you would track this primarily by seeing them re-engage with new products. So this is like almost going back to the beginning, if you will.
Yeah.
And then seeing them, come up with engagement with your communications on another solution. Propensity to buy for new customers is this could be trickier. Because then we may have to rely on some of the older methods of doing focus groups, doing surveys, which can be a little bit more time consuming, a little bit more costly, but it's probably the best way to see for a new customer how what their propensity to buy is. I've been at companies where they've used the anecdata, actually let the account managers do a ranking of propensity to buy separate from an opportunity. So obviously opportunities and their likelihood to close is one thing, but frankly I can't remember some of the terms that were used. But kind of if you went from a 0 to a 4 or 5 to say these people are champions of our company, these people need to be won over, whatever. But if your sales team has some kind of discipline to do this correctly, could be a good a good monitor.
Right.
And to touch on a couple of the others, there's customer satisfaction scoring, which is a pretty well-known science. Whether you use NPS or other companies that do customer satisfaction rankings, the intent there is how can I get some real good real-time information about how people feel about us, their desire to recommend us to the other colleagues of theirs, which then tips over into advocacy. And in the past, I've measured advocacy as a pure flat numbers game. How many customers do we have that have signed on to be advocates for us? How many are customer references for us? How many are willing to go out and speak at our conferences, our webcasts, and speak to the media? And this is actually a good metric for marketing, because if you're really focused on customer marketing, this is great to say, we're assigned to more references. We can set our targets that are fairly, easy to explain and say, we got more people out there who are willing to spread our word. And so that's a good thing.
Yeah. I like that. The trouble is it's very difficult to get, often it's quite difficult to get a sales team to engage with the CRM just with the data that helps them, let alone the data that helps us. Helps us, right? But I like that idea of the sales guys keeping an eye on somebody's propensity, whether they're likely to buy and that kind of stuff. I think that's good. But I'm not sure these days, because we've talked about the sixth sense data and the fact that people are making their choice so much earlier before they actually meet a sales guy, particularly in SaaS, whether we've, by the time the sales guy is ranking whether they got a propensity to buy, you're already shortlisted or they've already got a leading vendor in mind, haven't they? So I think you've got to talk to the customers a little bit there, I guess, about how
I think it's probably more relevant even when I consider where I've used this before, where you've got a really tight target account strategy. Yeah. And so like if an account manager has 10 accounts, okay, how would you rank their propensity by those 10 accounts? And then I think it's a little easier.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that that is that's knowledge for them, isn't it? Because really, if you've been given 10 target accounts and 9 of them have got no intention of buying ever, then a communication means you had, right? So propensity to buy.
I need to get 10 others.
Yeah, but it's going to be an important part of their forecasting, isn't it? So I think that's where, we marketing and sales can work very closely together, because this is suddenly a metric that's important to them and to us. So that's quite interesting. So so we've covered the three things: awareness, perception, and preference. And I think that each one kind of builds on the other, doesn't it? I think that
Absolutely.
preference at the end is really interesting. And also, what I think is that often when we talk about preference, we're often talking about B2C, but it's absolutely the case here, I think. And I also think that brand builds preference, doesn't it? Even if somebody isn't an existing customer, the fact that nobody got fired for buying your product is still a relevant sentiment, isn't it, in the world? So yes. So once we've done this and we figured out these are things we need to measure and that we need to focus on awareness, perception, and preference, how do we operationalize these? What kind of goals, KPIs, OKRs, or whatever you've recommended to clients in the past?
Whether it's three-letter acronym we can recommend here.
Yeah.
So I'd say, the first thing, because again, we've painted a picture with, three different kind of categories and some subcategories. So one is to determine what is the brand challenge you are trying to address. So, because the brand challenge, I mean, maybe you've got great customer satisfaction rankings. And so it's like, well, now I just need to get out there and find more customers.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe, let's just take, for example, that reach is our brand challenge. Is our programs getting us out into the market so that we can kind of, engage people early in the buying journey and start moving them in our direction. So then you could pick a series of metrics that help represent your market reach. We discussed a little before, share of voice, social impressions, ad impressions, unique web visitors, target audience engagement. So if you're using intent monitoring tools and you're trying to engage people early in their buying process. And so, obviously each of these tools has a different way of measuring, but if you kind of index where you are today at let's say 100. So we've picked 4 measures, each at 100 that adds up to 400. And I might be starting at, 50% share of voice. So I'm going to be looking for how much that increases, and the same thing with the other metrics. So then you follow your progress, whether you can do this monthly or on a quarterly basis, and you just see, so where the number, what's the trajectory? Some things will be going up, some things will be going down, but because I indexed everything at 100, I should be able to show, a bottom line number that says, maybe that, all told, the last quarter we've gone up 13%.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be telling me that my reach is getting better. And I didn't use one metric or one vanity metric. I used a set of metrics that are helping me tell a story about, our ability to get out there and get in front of more eyeballs.
Yeah. And I think that's the important, and that, I mean, I know that we perhaps we should share this in a blog post, because it is about creating these sort of spreadsheets or reports in your CRM solution and all that kind of good stuff, isn't it? But I think the important point you made there was that blend of data, that you're not too dependent on particular metrics. Because I find that you'll find I found I find that you find no I found
I'm fine with that.
I find that you will find people in the team or even in the senior leadership team that are kind of focused on, well, on LinkedIn we're doing this, or on a particular channel, and you can over-index, can't you, on a particular focus, and then something happens, I don't know, an algorithm changes, or that, I don't know, you don't post on there for a week or something, and then suddenly the metric looks bad. But if you hedge your metrics, then you're more likely to get a more balanced view, aren't you?
Absolutely, because you're right, and I mean, it's a little bit of a sophisticated process, if you will, but I think it has more credibility than hanging your hat on, as you said, LinkedIn or any one particular channel out there.
Yeah, and just a quick sort of bonus question for you on this stuff, because one of the we've tended to talk here about organic broadly, right? Organic and customer marketing with people who are already in the tent, as it were. But what about paid? Do we add into this the success of our paid ads? So they're usually very measurable, aren't they? And we can, yeah. Oh, cool.
And I think that makes a great balance of we're spending money, but we're also looking to see what our results are from organic tools. So
I think the interesting thing, I think, when you dive into this is quite often you find that these things are cumulative, whereas you spend on one channel and then actually your organic goes up. Because, you're getting your voice and your story out there, and not they may not be clicking on your ads, but they go and they remember your name and they search for you later, and you can't attribute that shit. But it's like, it's all over the place because that's the way the buyer's journey is. But you'll find that these things are cumulative, aren't they?
Well, how many of us don't click on the sponsored link, but we'll go go to the lower in the page and there's the same company for a non-sponsored link.
And I think we probably do that because we're marketers, right? And we're being considerate to our brethren, as it were, because you know what you're looking for, and you know how much it's going to cost if you click on that link. so you click elsewhere. Yeah. Absolutely. So that's cool. So that's so we've gone through those sort of three elements of brand. They're not three effing things. They're just three elements of brand: awareness, perception, and preference, and some ideas there about how you might measure those and what you might do. So that's our second agenda item after the weather. So our third agenda item will be the song, Jeff.
And I am leaving it up to you. I was running into a brick wall on this one. So,
well, we ended up with a little bit of a list, but I'm going to go with, and this is probably a UK band, so it might not be somebody you're particularly familiar with, Jeff, but I'm going to go with a band called The Heavy, and the song is How You Like Me Now, because I don't know, I think that's what this is all about.
That's
how
what
you like
it's all
me now.
about.
All right, Jeff.
Do you remember me?
Yeah, exactly. All right, well, thank you very much for that, mate. And I will see you again in the studio.
Yes, we need to book a time on this. This is a busy studio, so I got to tell the Heavy to get out, and so we can bring you back in.
All right, mate. I'll speak to you then. Cheers, buddy.
Cheers. Bye.
How you like me now? How you like me now? How you like me now? How you like me now?
Thank you, Jeff. That was a little bit of The Heavy, How You Like Me Now from 2009. And Jeff will be back in a couple of weeks. As next week, I'll be chatting with former guest, my chum and former CMO at Storyblock, Thomas Peaham, about, amongst other things, the next generation of SEO in a world where we're increasingly switching our research from Google to generative AI. So that's a wrap on episode 259 of the Rockstar CMO effing marketing podcast. Thank you for dropping a dime into your podcasting tube box, selecting our track and jiving along with us. I've been your host, Ian Truscott, and you can find links to me, Jeff, and all the links we referred to in the show notes on rockstarcmo.com, as well as our blog, newsletter, and all of our previous episodes. We'd love to hear from you, so please reach out via the website or LinkedIn, but let us know you're a listener. Just search Rockstar CMO. I'm sure you'll find us. The next episode of The Rose and Rockstar with Robert Rose will drop on Saturday. Until then, enjoy the rest of your week. And I hope you again join us here very soon at Rockstar CMO FM.
You may know you're listening to this show along the Marketing Podcast Network, but did you know there are other great shows on MPN to help your business? Robbie Samuels hosts the On the Schmooze podcast. Robbie, tell listeners what to expect from the show.
Since 2015, I've interviewed entrepreneurs who overcame challenges to achieve success in their field or industry. Tune in to On the Schmooze to listen as I ask deep questions to elicit untold stories about leadership and networking.
And where can people subscribe?
Find the show at ontheschmooze.com or on marketingpodcast.net, or just search for it wherever you get your podcasts.
You heard them. Go subscribe. This podcast is heard along the Marketing Podcast Network. For more great marketing podcasts, visit marketingpodcasts.net.